Hi, I'm Marina from Frocks and Frolics, and we're carrying on with our sew along for the Charlie Brown coat, and we're using the Ottobre magazine, and you can get that for yourself so you can sew with me. And this time we're going to learn how to do welt pockets. So ready, set, sew. For the pocket, you have a diagram on page 46 of your Ottobre magazine, which I think is really good. So you can go by that as well. Now you want to put your pieces together so the wrong sides are on top of each other, right sides to the outside with your pattern piece over the top. And then you need a double thread. And what we're going to do is mark the center line, and we're going to mark the ends and beginnings of our pocket, and you want to leave really long threads hanging on either side. That's quite important that you don't make them too short, otherwise they will pull out. First, we're marking the beginning and the end, and you want to just go through there and do that, and then we can also do the line for the actual pocket. Now you could just leave that and do that with tailor's chalk once you've got your start and end point marked correctly, right? I'm using Gutermann thread for that, but you can use a basting thread. If you do a lot of basting, then you have one of those in the house anyway, and they are not as slippery as the sewing machine threads, and they are better for this, but I don't actually keep any of that in the house, so I just use the general thread, and that's absolutely fine. So again, I leave very long threads hanging. And now I can remove my pattern piece. And when I open up this top layer and I cut through my thread, I will mark both sides, of course, so it'll show on the other side as well. So move back that top layer and then cut your threads, and just make sure that you don't pull too much so that the threads then, pull out. We don't want that. That's why they have to be really long. So I'm just cutting through there. And once you've done that on the other side, you can see exactly your marks here as well, see? Next, we're going to do our welts. So we just fold them over right sides on the inside, of course, and we're going to pin on both sides. You don't necessarily need to pin it, but I'm going to do it here, and then I do the other side, and we're going to sew those together just like I'm shown in my Ottobre magazine instructions. They really are good. This is exactly how you need to work it. And I've got my seam allowance of 1 centimeter here, and I sew that down on one side, and then I sew down the other side. And what's always really good is when you put the next piece straight under, so that you don't waste any of your thread. And then we can turn them and press them. And because this is very thick wool, I actually cut across the corner. Normally you would just leave it in because it gives you a really nice finish, but when it's this thick, it would just push up and you get a nose in it. You don't want that. So cut them across here so that it's not quite so thick, and then with your fingers open up the seam and turn it, and then you can just move it out with a pin if you like. And then we get to the part that some people don't like to do, and that is the ironing. And what you want to do is get a damp cloth to go over this so that you get a really pristine, very, very flat welt. So give it a pre-iron first, then take your ironing cloth, put it over the top, and just place the iron on until it's dry, that cloth. And when it is, you move a weight straight on it. A wooden weight is best, but it doesn't have to be one that's specifically for this, right? It just has to be weighty. I mean, in the olden days, I used books and all sorts for this. And you get a very flat edge, as you can see. It makes a huge difference to the end result and what it looks like. So I'm going to do the same on the other side as well. You put your cloth over, you put iron on, you wait until it's dry, then you put your weight on until no steam comes out anymore. You can see it coming out on either side, even if it's on footage not so clear to see. Then you move off your iron and you've got two really fantastic welts. Now the next thing is to top stitch those, and I'm going to put a double thread through the corner, so I've got something to pull on, and you want to stitch from the side that has the interfacing on. That's really important because that's the side that stands to the outside. And now I can pull on those threads I've just put through the corner, and so I don't get this hammering in the same spot. This is a really good little trick for you. And then you pull it out once you've gone over and you put it into the other side. There we go, right through that corner. Hold it steady, go to that corner, needle down, press a foot up and then turn, and then you can really pull if your machine doesn't transport the fabric. And I tell you what, it just won't. That's how it works with domestic sewing machines. It's very infuriating, but there you go. And then I do a second stitch line, and here I don't need any gimmicks, it works just as it is. And I do foot width. Of course you don't have to do that, and I do think that if you are not very confident yet and you won't get the distance right, it's better just to have one line than to have a second line which looks slightly off. And I go all the way down. You can lock in your stitches or tie them up and pull them away, and then again I go over with my wet cloth. You'll find that all the way through making this coat I do that an awful lot, and you can see the end result. It just looks fantastic. It looks better than what you get from a shop. It looks like something that somebody made especially to order. It's fantastic. So it should be really flat, and the bobbin thread still was the normal thread for that. And now we're at the part where it says pin and stitch the open edge of welt to pocket opening as marked on the pattern. And it's really easy. What you want to do is with the underside up, pin it to the inside that goes, you know, the middle of the coat to it, so that when you have it turned and, you know, it stands in the right direction. And I have seen people do that wrong just because it's kind of like, you know, not that easy to grasp when you do it for the first time. It needs to be towards the inside with the wrong side up. And when we put this on, you want to be just foot width from the edge. You don't want the centimeter. I did, and that was too wide. It would have been better foot width. And you need to start and end exactly on the end of your welt. You cannot be a stitch over or a stitch too little, right? You need to be directly on it. And if you are very good, you know, then you go, oh, well done. Next one. So again, foot width and go all the way down, lining up your welt, the thread markings, or if you have marked it with tailor's chalk, then you could use that. And again, you check that you gone to the end, and here it's good, and look, here it's not good. I'm a stitch off. So what do? I go down exactly beside the welt, and I do a few stitches forward and backward. You can do it really slowly and count your stitches. So go to forward, to backward, to forward, and now it's good. Next, we're going to put our lining pockets on. You've got an outer pocket and an inner pocket. And when you put the pockets on top of each other, you will see that the outer pocket is a slightly smaller pocket. So let's do that. Let's put this on. You can see. And of course, the pocket that's further over to the side needs to be slightly longer because it reaches in. And so we're going to do that smaller outer pocket first. And we're going to place that directly over our welt, and you need to leave the seam allowance at the top and the seam allowance at the lower end, right? And then I put some pins in vertical to the seam, and we're going to stitch it from the other side. Okay, so this is just popping it on. Great. And then the other pocket will sit on the other side. And you can do that now as well, or you can do it later. I'm just going to pin them on here. They lie directly opposite. So once you've placed the outer pocket, then you can put the inner pocket directly opposite it. And the next step is here. You can see that it goes over, and we're going to top stitch that down. Now on the pocket that lies on the welt, we're going to go directly on it, but on the one next to it, we're going to go inwards a little bit. Okay, but don't worry about it. We're going to do it step by step. So let's start sewing on the lining that goes directly on the welt, and we're going to go on that same line. We start where we started and we end where we ended. So that gives it extra security, and also it's just in the right position. Just go over it. And some people might say, oh, this backwards and forwards, I'm not sure if I'm going to overshoot. Well, then don't. Just knot it off and pull the thread away if you're in the slightest worried, because then you can kind of pull the thread back out if you went a stitch too far. So now we've done that and it's in. We're going to do the other side. So I can take my pins out, and here you can see I've got my seam allowance. It's all good. And on the other side, what we're going to do is we're going to not go all the way to the end. We're going to come inwards. Otherwise, you will see it, and you don't want that. And in your instructions, it says for that, pin and stitch inner pocket piece to the pocket opening, and note stitching line is slightly shorter than finished length of welt. That's what I'm doing now, and it's really important. You want to have about 1.5 centimeters inwards, or a centimeter at least, because the pocket, it sits at a slant, so it goes slightly up. So if you do the same length, it will be visible, and it would be a disaster, especially if you have a very expensive wool. And again, we're only doing foot width, so foot width on either side, and then we can slash the pocket opening from the wrong side, and we clip diagonally to the stitching at the corners. That's what your instructions say, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. And make sure that you don't accidentally cut your welt as well. So you only cut the fronts of your jacket right into the corner. See, I'm putting my thumb there. Just make sure, you know, I don't cut into it. Although it is so thick, it's hardly likely that you do that. So we go to the other end and then into the corners. And you can see how much shorter I left it. I think it's a good centimeter for me. Just want to be safe. Rather safe than sorry, right? Now I can tuck in my pocket linings and make sure that everything sits really straight. Now I'm going to add an extra stitching line to it in a minute. So it's going to add an extra step. But the thing you want to do first here is you want to make sure that that little triangle where we cut into our welt sits really neatly folded over. And here you can see that we're going to pin that down, and then we're going to close the entire pocket from there, and make sure that your triangle is really flat. And I'm really pulling it out there, and then I need to swivel it round a bit so that I can pin it nicely. So I'm folding basically my front jacket away to get into it, right, to pin it. And now I'm going to put a pin in there to hold it. And if that was now according to the instructions from Ottobre, I would just carry on pinning it all, but for now I'm not doing that. I'm just pinning the corners, making sure they're really flat, because I'm going to top stitch that edge here. And because I'm going to do that, and I don't want to sew in my pocket in any way, so they need to be open, so you can't close them yet. So with both of these little triangles pinned, I'm going to press this again with a damp cloth so that everything sits exactly where it sits as well when it's finished. So there's no pulling or pushing, and it is entirely flat. So again, wait until it's dry, then lift it off and put your weight on it. Preferably a little bit faster than I did it here. And that will give you a really nice finish. So you can see what it's going to look like. And the key is to now keep it all nice and flat. But what we've got to do first now, of course, we got to move away one of the pieces here so that we can top stitch. So I'm taking out my pins again because that's nicely ironed in now. That's not going anywhere. And I'm going to stitch along here. You could leave that out and just pin the pocket and sew it, but I'm going to do that. So open out the pockets and pin them to the front so that they can, you know, slip and go under. Over to the sewing machine. Don't lock in your stitches. We're going to pull them away and then sew them away. And with that stitch length 3 or 3.5, depending on what stitch length you decided on, just make sure that your top stitching is the same everywhere. That's all. Go to the end and again leave the long thread hanging, and on the bobbin for this you don't need to have the top stitching thread, right, because it's underneath, nobody sees it. Pull it out, and I think that's a really beautiful finish. I do the same on the other side, and I make sure that my pocket sits really straight, because you're now stitching it to the seam allowance, so it's got to be right, doesn't it? Right, now same as ever, we're just going to pull them through. And if you are like me, I couldn't even see where my thread was because, you know, my sight's not the best anymore and it's all dark. So I'm just pulling my top stitching thread through to the other side, and then I knot it off and pull it away, right? It takes a long time to make this coat. This is not a quick one, but I think it's so beautiful. It's well worth it. You want all these nice methods in there because they're proper tailoring methods. So if we made coats and jackets or whatnot, when I was an apprentice for people and they paid a lot of money, we wouldn't have dared to lock in our stitches for things like that. You always pull it away and you sew it really neatly. So that's what I'm doing now. Pull it away. And you do that on the other side as well, of course. And now we go back to the Ottobre instructions, you know, same as before. But I'm going to just give this a little press just in case, you know, I'm always pressing or ironing. Some people say, you always say pressing. But I do like it to be all flat before I start sewing. Well ironed is half sewn, and then I fold over again, you know, my coat fronts, so I can get in there, and I'm going to pin it back down. And I think I'm just moving it round because I thought, nah, I can't do it like that. Got to come from this side. That's it. Always pin from left to right, so that's the way it goes under the sewing machine. And then I'm pinning my pocket all the way around. And in my case, it's not edge to edge anymore. And that's fine. Number one, you will see in a minute that the pocket's too big anyway, slightly, not much, but a little bit for my buttonholes. And so it's important it's flat and not that the edges lie exactly on top of each other. It's an inner pocket where you don't even see it. So I'm going to the other side and I'm going to pin that as well. Now to sew this together, where you have all this fabric, you won't get in with a regular presser foot. So get out your zipper foot, presser foot, and then move the needle all the way over to the left so that you can be right on the edge of it. So now it's all pinned. Awesome. Over to the sewing machine and sew this all the way around with your zipper foot. And you can see here, I can get right close to it. You will never get this right if you don't change your foot. Go as close as you can. And if you can't get closer, I'm a millimeter off as well here. It's very thick fabric. These are not industrial machines. So just, you know, it'll be fine. It still looks good. And then I just sew around with that. No need to change your presser foot because, you know, that would be like overkill. So keep an even distance. And there I come to the other side. And it's really bulky. I mean, I have really thick fabric, so hopefully yours isn't quite as thick. Sorry, my hair's in the way, isn't it? I was bending forward so I could see what I was sewing. I'll check. So you can see that I didn't quite get right to the edge either. And now here the pocket, you can see that it overlaps a little bit with my buttonhole. So what I did is in that area, I just made it slightly smaller and then cut it off, and it's absolutely fine. So the final thing here is now to sew the pocket on. Ottobre suggests to just stitch it down on the side with another line of top stitching, and I don't like that at all. I would have either not top stitched that line and left that line coming up to the end and pulled all the threads away so it looks like it is one going all the way around. But when I used to be a tailor and we used to make this professionally, we would sew it on by hand. So you sew your thread away so the knot can't be seen, and then the key to that is to go where the seam is, right, go in and then move it slightly, straighten it out and go all the way through to the other side, and then you come back up a little bit further on or in the same place, and you really slowly work your way up. Now, I'm sorry it's a little bit dark, but basically you can't see that stitch when you're done. And then at the end I go through the top part and then I just sew that thread away on the other side, and it literally looks like it floats on top. It's really, really nice. Fantastic. So we're almost done. Have you noticed? So now I'm doing 3 stitches just across the corner because I think it looks good, and if there's a lot of stress on it as well, then we don't want it to rip out. You leave a long thread again. I'm going to again pull them away and then sew them away. Well worth it. It will look great, or in the end it did look great. I'm really pleased with this coat, and like I said in every video, I want one for myself. I put this one on and it was a little bit too small for me. The sleeves were of course way too short, but I would make that for myself in you know, a larger size. Now it's absolutely beautiful, but because we've pressed it, sometimes you can see this line shining through on the outside. And again, what we do to get rid of that little line, because that will stay in the coat, right? What you iron now, you probably never iron again. You just steam this coat after. So go underneath the pocket and press it. Yeah, that's important. And once you've done that here, I'm just folding it away on the other side, you know, and then when you turn it over, you won't see a thing and it'll be perfect. And you never need to touch this again. The front is done. And I see you again next week where we're going to actually start sewing this coat together. So I see you there. Bye for now.